Welcome.
Welcome. Hello, that's Jessica Smetana. I'm Spencer Hall, and we are DNF. Jessica, Hungarian Grand Prix, not exactly the most exciting or thrilling stop on the F1 circuit, correct?
Well, as you so eloquently tweeted, Spencer, they don't call it the Fungaro ring.
Ah! It's like way more awkward when you say it out loud, right? It's
I
like
know it didn't sound funny at all.
hot
Okay.
tweets do not hot bars make all the time.
But it was a very, as the F1 experts say, technical race. A race that was won in
Hmm.
strategy, in pit stops, in
Hmm.
tire compounds this week, and also a race that was lost in strategy and tire compounds this race. And as has been the theme with most of our episodes of the show, Spencer, we must start with our review of the Hungarian Grand Prix by once again asking, does Ferrari know that they are racing?
Does Ferrari even know there's a race going on? Because we have a lot of little things to talk about. You said it was a very technical race. That's a very complimentary way of looking at it. I might dark side this a bit and say that this is a race for the nerds. This was a race where the greatest drama was, ooh, what tires are they going to put on? And that's, for the casual, that may not necessarily be the greatest race, but it does give us another opportunity to ask, is Ferrari even racing? Do they know what a race is? If you put it on their plate, would they know if it was food or a race? That's very much the kind of level of thinking we're at
Wait.
because
Maybe it's cake. Maybe they cut it open and it's
maybe
cake.
is it like when an alien civilization first encounters something and they're like, do we kill it, eat it, or raise it as one of our own? Ferrari would not know. They would not know if they saw a race coming their way. I do think it gave us an exciting opportunity to see two things that I think we knew would happen. I think we all figured that if the car lasted, that Max Verstappen would not finish ninth or 10th, that
Yeah.
he would elbow his way to the front and luck out. And I think the second thing that we all thought was going to happen that ended up happening with an exciting variation was Ferrari absolutely putting it in the bin, just absolutely binning it.
Yeah, should we I mean, I know you said like tire compounds are for nerds, but maybe we could just give like a very very easy tire 101 for people who maybe don't know
Mm-hmm.
why
Sure.
Ferrari's second pit stop for Charles Leclerc was such a disaster. So
Mm-hmm.
Spencer, basically the rules are that you have to use two different tire compounds during a race, correct? And this was a
Correct.
race in which Ferrari was going to be using three different tires, two different compounds over the span of the race with two pit stops. So they
Mm-hmm.
started Charles Leclerc on medium tires, put medium tires on him during his first pit stop, and then when his second pit stop happened, they decided, well, we can't go on the soft tires because those will degrade faster and we have a lot of race left to race, so we have to put on hard tires. So that was why Ferrari put on the hard tires, which then were not the appropriate tire for the end of the race, and he was not able. I hear a cat making noises and I
That
love
is a
it.
dog, and I'm going to
Oh,
try to
okay.
get her out of here.
I almost made it through without the dog stopping me. But anywho, you could tell the
Mm-hmm.
dog to join. The dog actually should get hired by Ferrari to do their pit strategy
The
for
dog
next
has
race.
an equal understanding of race strategy, right? Because this is what you should know. Okay, so there were the circumstances today. A tire is generally dictated by track conditions and how your driver's managing those track conditions. If it's a wet track, you're going to want one kind of tire. If it's a dry track, you're going to want another. I need you to know what Ferrari did here
Hmm.
in the course of this race in terms of managing tires and how rare it is. This comes from at Virtual Statman on Twitter, F1 Observer. The medium hard tire strategy, which is exactly what Ferrari ended up using, going to the hardest slick of all slicks at the
Hmm.
end of the race. Given the conditions today, all you need to know, without getting too far in the weeds, all you need to know that it did not figure in any of Pirelli's strategy recommendations for today's race And it wasn't even suggested as an alternative for quicker strategies. So it's not like they gambled on something that might have happened. It's not like they did something that was contrarian that could have worked out. No, they needed a knife and they pulled out a banana. That's very much what we're looking at in terms of what Ferrari actually accomplished in this race.
Yeah, and it wasn't like their hands were tied by starting with the two mediums and then they had to pit Leclerc and put him on hards. They could have waited a little bit and put him on softs. They could have, I don't know, thought about the end game Spence before they put him on the mediums the second time around. So yes, I think it's fair to say Ferrari once again lost this race for Leclerc and for Sainz. Neither of them ended up on the podium despite qualifying in the top three yesterday. And we had another Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell podium for the second weekend in a row because of Ferrari.
Yeah. Look, it's old times. We got Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton in the top three with an assorted Mercedes in there, right? Last year it was, usually if that was the arrangement, it was Bottas, and then if it wasn't, it was George Russell. And now you've got this. And by the way, given what each of these guys, Mercedes, we should go ahead and give them full credit here because Mercedes looked like garbage on Friday, absolute garbage in practice, and managed to finish 2-3, which I believe is their best finish for the season as a team, is finishing 2-3 and really turning around. Like if you want to go, okay, to borrow a football metaphor, if you want to go into the second half looking strong, this is as promising. No, Betty, 1 second. I'm serious. This is live, and I cannot get this dog out of here. I have to go ahead
It's okay.
and get her out of this room.
I'll fill for a few minutes. So I've been doing Hungarian on Duolingo, and it's not going so well. So for those of you asking for my Formula 1 minute in Hungarian tomorrow, unfortunately, it's going to be in English, but I am excited for it because I've also run out of ways to make loud, scary Italian sounding noises. Spencer has agreed to help me with that a little bit later on in the episode. So I'm excited for that. As Spencer wrangles his dog, we have a few things. Oh, he's back.
Vamping. It was great vamping. I could hear the whole thing.
Thank you. I was going to say we have a few things later on in the episode that people should get excited for. We have mid-season awards, Spencer, because the summer break is coming up and it is 3 weeks long. And as all of these drivers go on their summer yacht cruises, we have some things to award some of them with, maybe to put on their mantelpieces in their Monaco apartments. So we're excited for that later on in the episode. But anyways, back to Ferrari, Spencer. Ferrari. Mattia Binotto at one point left the pit wall, and Ted Kravitz joked that maybe he was going to get a cup of coffee, which makes me wonder if he watches the show, Spencer, because that was what we have been joking about all season. Are they just fancying themselves a little espresso while the race is going on?
I think so. I think this is a good idea, by the way, for Ferrari, because it's not like they were going to get anything right. At this point, Charles Leclerc should just go ahead and no sell, not pit, not come in. He should call his own plays. I think this is probably a good time to go ahead and test your knowledge of Italian, because I saw last week during the F1, just briefly, last week during your F1 minute, you did the entire thing in French. Right? Because I did. I do know French though. I don't know a lot of Italian other than the swears that my grandma hurls at me. Well, that's fine because I don't know Italian either, but I have a little helper in the form of Google Translate if you are ready. Okay,
I'm ready. So what's the game here? So you're going to say Italian phrases. I'm going to guess what they mean.
Yes.
Okay.
And they are all somewhat related to Ferrari's situation. Okay, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Non riuscivo a trovare il mio culo con una mappa.
We didn't plan for this.
Sort of. That's very close. I could not find my ass with a map. That's one of them. Okay.
Wait, can you say that again? I'm gonna write this down.
Yeah. No, because I have erased
Okay,
it,
that's
and
fine.
I'm on to yes, because I have a very short attention span. And this one is I'm going to sure I have it right, but I think it is also appropriate for what we have, which is ho perso una gara perché non riuscivo a decidere quali scarpe indossare.
Can you say it again?
Sure, because I'm sure my pronunciation
I just
is
got to hear one
magnifique
root
here.
word, Spencer.
Okay. Ho perso una gara perché non riuscivo a decidere quale scarpe indossare.
Okay, what does that mean?
I lost a race because I could not decide what shoes to wear. Which, don't make it easy, Ferrari. Don't. That's exactly what was about to happen, okay? That you could not decide what shoes to wear, and it cost you a possible 2 spots on the podium, and you got 4th and 6th instead in the last race going into the summer break. That's
So
what happened.
our buddy Nate Saunders from ESPN tweeted that Verstappen has 80 points ahead of Leclerc right now. And if he fails to finish at the next 3 consecutive races, he will still lead the championship. So not only did they lose this race and the race before and many races before that because of these strategy calls, it seems like the championship is almost assuredly Max Verstappen's. And we are barely, I mean, we have 10 races left, right? Or 9 races after today. So we may be witnessing the last 5 races of the season with a championship already kind of locked in the bag for Verstappen. When at the beginning of the season, it seemed like Ferrari maybe would be the team to win the championship with a lot of races left to go. So there's been quite a shift. And I don't know at what point Ferrari decides they need to make changes. Because I imagine if their race strategy is this bad, their strategy in assessing their strategy probably also is bad, right? Like the whole just all the strategies are bad.
It's a lot like, do you trust the engineer to fix the engineer's problems? Like, do you even, if you're this bad in spot analysis in the moment, how bad are you going to be in examining your own problems?
Right.
Like, there's a crisis of confidence at multiple levels here because I'm pretty sure the driver does not trust the crew at this point, does not trust the engineers, or at least the strategist. He might trust the engineers, but they do not trust the strategist, okay? And you could not blame Carlos Sainz or Charles Leclerc for feeling that way. We all heard the scream last week. They're broken, okay? They're both, in their own way, each broken. Even with Carlos Sainz getting his first win this year, they're both absolutely, if you said that they did not trust them at all, you would not blame them. You cannot trust, by the way, the strategists with the actual engineers because there's got to be tension there because someone in the garage at Ferrari is killing it. Someone is absolutely putting out top-notch work week after week after week because we keep saying the same thing. We keep saying, oh man, they got a great car. That car is amazing. And then someone makes a call in a race about when to put the wrong tires on or call someone in or makes a harebrained strategy decision otherwise and blows it for them. Like, I don't know what you can do to retool that if all of the same people are in charge.
Right. After the race, Charles Leclerc said he didn't know why they went on the hards and that the last part of the race was a disaster. So it seems both drivers have kind of lost faith in the team calls. I also heard earlier in the race there was a dummy call for Carlos Sainz to box and he didn't box, and that was apparently like their plan. It was to kind of trick Mercedes and George Russell into going into the pit lane to offset it. But at one point, do they all become dummy calls and the drivers just ignore everything that they say in the pit lane and choose their own adventure? I think Carlos Sainz maybe has a legitimate stake at being the best strategist on the Ferrari team. So things seem to be going well there. Not sure what happens for them for the rest of the season. They may not even win second place in the Constructors' Cup. Mercedes looks like they're very close to overcoming that gap. So it's going to be interesting to see how they overcome the reputation they've made for themselves over the first half of the season.
I mean, you want to say that the second half of the race was a disaster. The second half of the season has genuine disaster potential for Ferrari for all of the reasons that you just listed. It's stunning how bad they've been at managing all of and developing all of the work they did in the offseason, all the work they've done over the past couple of years and narrowing the gap between them, Mercedes, and Red Bull. It's and then squandering it in the moment. Like that's it. It's not. That's the amazing thing to me because part of me wants to say they can't fix this because they're not going to change management, but another part of me wants to say, okay, if they just change the strategy, if they just change the management, they would be in such a better spot. So it's hard for me to say that they're that far off either. They're like to me, it's an either or. They're either going to crash or they are absolutely going to soar in the second half based on whether they keep the same people in charge of strategy and of race management.
Before we move on to our mid-season awards, do we have anything else we want to say about this race, about Verstappen, about Mercedes? Mercedes once again pulling off an amazing finish after having the worst Friday of their season, which seems to happen like pretty often. Like they'll describe the car as a shit box, and then like a day later, Lewis will finish in third place or something, like just behind the Red Bulls. Do we have any other thoughts on the Hungarian Grand Prix?
The guys behind behind the anthem who were holding the flags, yeah, that was Hungary. You're wild for that one. You're weird. How would you describe those dudes?
Um, you know what? That's a really good question. I'm not sure how I would describe them. They were in like black tank tops, and it was very
Mm-hmm.
cold there. So that was an interesting choice. It was a very like extravagant national anthem as we've seen this season. Maybe that should be one of our awards, best anthem. I still think the guy who shredded at the was it Austrian Grand Prix? I still think that guy
Oh no,
finishes
no,
in
Great
first
Britain.
place.
Great. Was it
Oh, you're
at
right.
Silverstone? Yeah.
That was at Silverstone. That was incredible.
Yeah, that's still my leader for anthem. I think you can pretty much judge whether this country's like a chill vibe or not by how exuberant or how exuberant the anthem is. Like if the anthem is super like amped and over the top, it's probably a pretty chill place, right? Because we're just all there to have a good time. If you do what
Mhm.
Hungary did, you're like, I don't know, man, things kind of feel off here.
Mm,
Thinks that this is
mm.
it's kind of a solemn anthem. I don't know if
Yeah,
you want a solemn dirge.
what's the vibe? What's the vibe we're going for with our anthem? As far as anthems go, I have now probably memorized the entire hymn of Max Verstappen's national anthem, the Dutch national anthem, because I've seen him on the podium so many times. But I also was thinking about this, Spencer, because this is now the second weekend in a row we've had Max, Lewis, George. I would probably take a college course on the interpersonal psychological dynamics of the champagne ceremonies after these races.
Hmm.
Because before the race, Max was on Sky Sports and he was talking about how much he preferred his rivalry with Leclerc over Lewis Hamilton. And I mean, it's no like secret that Max and Lewis have not gotten along because of all of the incidents last season, Abu
Yeah.
Dhabi, everything else that has happened between them. And then they go on the podium after the race and have to like spray champagne on each other for the cameras. It is very bizarre.
It is. I enjoy also seeing uh, Lewis Hamilton at work because it occurred to me the other week. Lewis Hamilton might be the person in the world who is best at spraying champagne. He
Yeah.
might have had the most practice of anyone because for most of us, that's like a 3 or 4 times in a lifetime kind of thing. There may
Yeah, if
be
you're
some
lucky,
club
yeah.
Right. There may be some DJs or club promoters who just do this weekly and maybe they're awesome at it. But the person I would probably draft in like the first like champagne sprayers draft of all drafts, it's gotta be Lewis because he's done it so long and so often. So like I want to see like if we had a targeted competition, that's my dude. I'd take him.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you on that one. Should we get to some of our awards this season, Spencer?
Absolutely.
All right, so I'll read
Uh
the I'll read the category to you, and you can
okay.
maybe guess on who your winner is, and then I'll tell you who actually won. Again, these are voted on by very top secret delegates from the DNF mid-season race award team.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have problems, please tweet it at them. It's not at Spencer and I. We had nothing to do with these results. Price Waterhouse Cooper has been keeping them a secret. Whatever that accounting company is called that screwed up the Academy Awards a couple of years ago. So again, nothing to do with us. So the first award, Spencer, is for the worst performance by a motorsport governing body. So the winner of this award would be a Grand Prix, the Grand Prix in which the governing body was the worst this season.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say that it was F1 for alternating race directors because my favorite thing that F1 makes a very big deal about being super official and never making things up, then proceeds to be very unofficial and make things up constantly. We will trade off. We will have dueling race directors just because one guy screwed up last year. In what was a very human moment, I will say, Michael Massey's probably in the wrong spot. But that scarred the FIA so much that they have decided to go completely the other way. They should just have a race director of the week. For now, it's Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey is our race director of the week. Congratulations.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And he surveys 100 people to see what he should do for each incident.
I just want to see Steve Harvey's reaction to Ferrari, right? Like when Ferrari does something, he goes, oh, Lord. Just like covers his face. Oh, no. I know you just didn't do that. Or hear
you're
him
right.
in his accent say Max Verstappen. That's also, yeah.
The winner of the award is the FIA for specifically the start at the Monaco Grand Prix. Spencer, I don't know if you recall, but there was a 45-minute rain delay, which then the audience found out the delay was actually because there was a power outage on the grid. So that was super well communicated. Totally didn't extend the race out by an extra hour and screw things up for everyone. Ferrari also lost that race. Not sure if that would have been helped or hindered by starting with the rain. But you're right. The FIA wins that award. Our next award, Spencer, is for the nihilistic driver. It's the nihilistic driver award. Who do you think is the winner of our nihilistic driver award?
It's definitely not the same person at the beginning of the season as it would have been at the end of the season, because I feel like I've watched Charles Leclerc just discover existentialism in real time. That he might have been a person of faith when this started, but now he's just reading Camus and saying things like, within myself, I have discovered an eternal spring. He's going to come out of this stronger. But, once you put that kind of sadness inside somebody, it changes things. So I'm going to go Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, that's our winner. He barely beat out Lewis Hamilton, who at the beginning of the season was very, very dark and depressed. But now Charles, basically thanks to his performance at Paul Ricard and his epic radio call, he has won the award. If you listen closely to the radio call, Spencer, he's actually saying "eat at Arby's." Eat at Arby's. That was what the radio call was.
Mange, so is it in French would be mange à l'arbre. Mange à l'arbre.
Le boeuf. We have le boeuf.
Nous avons le boeuf.
Okay, and our next award, we have 3 left. Our next award is the award for the most Florida Turnpike Grand Prix.
Oh, this one feels very easy to me, though not without competition. There's a few other tracks that are very Florida Turnpike, but I'm going to go the one we both attended, the Miami GP.
Yes, we had a Grand Prix that literally went underneath the Florida Turnpike, and we have barely spoken about it on this show, Spencer. So who are your other contenders for most Florida Turnpike Grand Prix? Because I think you're right. There are a couple other good ones.
Silverstone is there's a very Florida vibe at Silverstone. So I'm going to go with that also because it's a road course that goes through some really unusual territory in terms of F1 racing. Baku also has a little bit of Florida Turnpike to it.
Extremely, extremely Florida Turnpike. It's kind of interesting how we haven't spoken about Miami. Like nothing really happened at the Miami Grand Prix. Like it had no bearing on anything. It might have been the most boring race of the season so far in terms of actual racing. Is that accurate?
I mean, Ferrari didn't blow it, so it was more interesting. The Hungarian GP was more interesting than the Miami GP. The Miami GP was interesting because I was at it. That's about it. The Miami GP for me, the most interesting thing about it was Lewis Hamilton saying it was like racing in a Home Depot parking lot. That there's a little bit of English to American translation going on there, but he essentially said it was like a junior kart race in a Home
I was
Depot
gonna say,
parking lot.
has Lewis Hamilton ever been to a Home Depot? And if so, what is he purchasing at Home Depot?
Same thing we're all purchasing, which is usually like 5 nails and a bag of jerky at checkout when you get hungry and go, Home Depot has snacks? Crazy.
I think he's getting like a 2x4 plank to fix the porpoising on the bottom of his car. He's like, you know what? I'll do it myself. I got this. Whatever.
Mate, I'll fix it myself. If you won't do it, I will.
And
Toto's
he's
behind him like, that's very true, Lewis. That's very true, Lewis. Good job.
He's definitely not getting beef jerky, though. There is a 0%
Mhm.
chance Lewis Hamilton has ever eaten beef jerky.
No.
All right. And our next award is for the cheekiest driver. Now, this one, Spencer, was a tough call because there's a lot of cheeky drivers in F1. So who is your guess for the winner of the cheekiest driver award?
I don't know if it's a guess. I have a nominee. My
Hmm.
nominee is Fernando Alonso
Ooh.
because he's the only one I know who's given someone the finger wag on the track during a race this year.
Yeah. The finger wag on the track award was actually one of the pre-show awards that was given out. That one is not given out on screen. So
Okay, the
unfortunately,
Dikembe handed out the prestigious Dikembe. Yes.
that's a separate award category. And Fernando was not invited to the ceremony. The winner of the cheekiest driver award actually goes to the one and only Valtteri Bottas, for selling pictures of his naked ass for charity.
Literally cheeky. I have 2 of them in my house right now. I can't find one of them.
You have
but
two?
I have 2 copies of that image. Because I bought one and somebody was like, yeah, I sent you one.
I still don't even have one.
Somebody figured I needed it, so I got one. I'll send you my extra.
Okay, well, if we ever get to talk to the esteemed Valtteri Bottas, I think you need to bust out both of them and just have them like inconspicuously hanging behind you in frame and see if he notices.
Shake 4 halves of butt. I will literally have 4 halves of Valtteri Bottas butt on the screen all at once.
4 cheeks. Well, 6 if you count your face. All right. Yeah. So Valtteri wins that award. And our final award, which we award every week, is for the best lad. Spencer, who wins our best lad award?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because this is the award I've been waiting for. Because I will state this. It was up in doubt, okay? There was some hesitance on the part of the judges as to who the best lad might be for a moment. But then, after a miserable performance on Friday, an electrifying pole run on Saturday, and a podium finish for the best lad several weeks running, retaining the title of best lad, that would be George Russell, the best lad of all. Oh, lad of lads, defender of the crown jewels, the Queen's personal pet and pride. That's correct, George Russell. The man so British, he is essentially a walking sack of fish and chips. George Russell. A walking vitamin D deficiency, but we love him. Yes. Best lad of all lads. Have yourself a pint on us. You won't, because you have to weigh 138 pounds to get in that car at 6 feet tall. But best lad of all, George Russell.
That was incredible. Did you happen to hear George Russell's sit-down interview with BBC Checkered Flag podcast, Spencer?
No, because I'm busy listening to Chris Whittingham, interviewing the lad. That's what I'm waiting on.
Well, it was very. I mean, George Russell's very he thinks about what he says, and he's very kind of calm and thoughtful and collected. He's also 24 years old, which is like those things tend to not coexist. But they asked him about the meme that he was the star of, and he really enjoyed it. They asked him about being the leader of the Drivers Association at such a young age, et cetera, et cetera. But my favorite takeaway was that George Russell was 4 minutes early for the interview.
Of course he was, because if you're not early, you're late. That is
And
correct.
if you're not early, you're no longer the best lad.
You lose lad status, right? Like I just George
Lattice.
Russell, like I hope that he has his podium finish, gets in a car, goes home, and immediately like parks in a gravel driveway, like a scenic gravel driveway. A lamb sidles up next to him, right? He kisses his mom on the cheek, immediately dives into a meat pie, right? And then sits down and watches Love Island. Just like the most British construct you could possibly make. One George Russell.
Yeah. So we're gonna get to some audience questions in a second here. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will
Mm-hmm.
answer as many as we can. We probably have about 15 minutes left. Before we get to that, Spencer, Sebastian Vettel is retiring. Do we have any lasting thoughts on Sebastian Vettel?
Only this that I think he's actually the pre-Lewis. Like I think that
Mm,
Lewis Hamilton as a model of someone who has had phenomenal success on the track and then transformed himself into someone who was a spokesperson for so many off-track issues and really
hmm
taking his profile and public prominence forward into activism. Sebastian Vettel, I don't want to say like, oh, he did that before Lewis, but that's just factual. He was somebody who used his position to raise awareness around issues that F1 is loath to talk about a lot. Particularly, last year you go to Hungary. Okay, Hungary is under the rule right now of Viktor Orban and a bunch of extremely weird ultra nationalist people who put weird dudes in tank tops holding flags behind the anthem. That's very much their vibe. And one plank of that platform is serious homophobia and trying to restrict the rights of LGBTQ plus people. And that's something that Vettel spoke out about, wore the helmet. Like that's just one example of the kind of way that like Sebastian Vettel, who I think at the peak of his fame, looked at it very coldly and said, I could use this as a platform for activism, but also to really maintain a personal life. If you know this about Vettel, Vettel family dude, like really has not let fame get to his head, has been a very down to earth person. Like I think that's probably like, if you go, well, what is his legacy? You go, well, there was a championship, sure, but somebody who is as balanced a driver in a lot of different ways on a personal and a political level. So good on him for being something that's very rare, which is an F1 driver that we haven't had to be embarrassed of much, and who has been like a real credit to his community. And I only say that in the sense of like embarrassed. I mean, if you're that famous, it's very easy to everyone's got eyes on you, and the slightest little thing can become a very big issue. And he's, for the most part, avoided that and been a real credit to racing worldwide, like transcending F1.
Yeah. Yeah, which is one of the reasons that I think people speculated he would stay in F1 longer, because it's kind of the age-old argument of like, do you have a bigger platform when you're racing and you're one of the 20 drivers on the grid, or can you do more when you don't have to go, travel around the world
Yeah.
23 weekends of the year and put so much time and effort into actually just being an athlete? So I
Mm-hmm.
think his answers to a lot of the questions about why he retired, again, shouting out BBC Checkered Flag podcast, because I had listened to their Hungarian Grand Prix pre-show, and they ran an interview with him that I haven't been able to find his answer in transcription form anywhere, but it was, I believe, with Jenny Gao, and he said that she asked him essentially like, to what extent do like your activism kind of play a role in this? And he said that like, unfortunately, the climate crisis is something that is going to be part of our future no matter how much we wish it away. And so he feels bad for the younger drivers, and that he like his basically his thought process on it is that like, of course it plays a role, and that's part of everyone's futures going forward. And the way he said it was 10 times more eloquent than what I just described, so everyone should go listen to it in his own words. But I think, like you said, Spencer, he's a very impressive athlete. He seems to say all the right things and do all the right things, and so I'm for one looking forward to what he does next and how he can continue to put that message forward, because I'm sure he's not going to just kind of disappear. Although if he does, he's earned it. He can do whatever he wants now. But he seems like
Yeah.
someone who is legitimately focused on like trying to leave the sport better than when he entered it, which is something that I've heard Lewis Hamilton also say that is, his goal, and something that he admires Sebastian Vettel for.
Yeah, I think when you say somebody who did not see the choice of driver or personality as an either as an or statement, right? Like I think he
Mm-hmm.
saw it as not an either or, but why not both at the same time? And like to be able to pull that off, you're a different kind of dude.
All right. Shall we get to some questions?
Let's get to some questions.
All right. Well, this one's a tough one. It is, who is the best Canadian F1 racer? Nicholas Latifi, Goat Tiffy, or Lance Stroll?
It's very hard not to say Stroll based on the evidence. Like, also, I would say that the best racer is also probably the one that can get their dad to buy a team for them, which that's a power move, man. Good job. So I'm gonna go ahead
That
and
is
say
true.
Stroll.
I think after this weekend, I'm going with Nicholas Latifi. He came in first place in P3 yesterday, which was probably the pinnacle of his racing career so far. And after he crossed the line, people cheered for him at the stands because it was so improbable and they were so happy for him. And he told his team over the radio, were people clapping for me? It was just so
Oh,
wonderful, Spencer. Just so wonderful.
yeah, that's so painful.
But yeah, I mean, if we're going on like pure merits as a driver, Lance Stroll is probably the more talented driver. He's gotten in the points a few times this season, and Nicholas Latifi is pretty consistently at the bottom of the grid. Also, not in as good of a car. Um,
No, not at all.
not really close, but it's a good question because we can laugh. We can just laugh as we answer it.
We can laugh a little bit. By the way, my favorite moment this weekend is probably, I believe it was Carlos Sainz saying he had been held up by this Williams, and the way he said it was just, it hurt my heart. Like, I want well for
Oh.
Williams. Everyone's trying real hard, but the way he said it was basically kind of like this Ultima, this this Hyundai on the track, right? Like, yeah,
Goddamn
it was rough.
Suzuki Esteem. That's a
Yeah.
better call shout out. All right. Our next question is, when do we start blaming Mattia Binotto for the failures at Ferrari on race day? When did
Right
we
now.
stop blaming him? I think it's kind of been on him
Yeah.
the whole time, right, Spencer?
Yeah, yeah. If you're the dude, like the visual of you going to get coffee in the middle of the race that your team is busy absolutely botching, that's damning. That's bad. I know you're going to go get coffee. Respect. Sometimes I got to go get coffee, but if I'm in the middle of the race and that happens, that's just sort of, that's not an indicator or a metaphor I want to give anybody in that position. So yeah, let's blame Mattia.
Yeah.
Like it's time for Ferrari to get a haircut, literally and figuratively.
To be fair, he may not have been getting coffee. We just assumed he was because
Yeah,
Ted
yeah.
Ted Kravitz joked about it. But I think it's fair to give him a lot of the blame, given the fact that he has his fingerprints all over this Ferrari team. He worked in the engineering department, and then he was the chief technical officer at Ferrari. And so then he was promoted to team principal. So he's kind of worked in all these different aspects of team. And I think it's one of those, like, if comparing it to football, it's like, okay, if your D line is consistently not getting to the quarterback and is your weakest part, at what point do you blame the head coach? Well, like, the head coach has a say in who his players are, who his D line coach is, what strategy the defense is running. Like, there's, at some point, the person at the top does have responsibility for the entire team if there's one aspect of the team that's not clicking. And so we obviously don't know what extent, or at least I don't know what extent Binotto is making any of these calls himself, but he's clearly making calls about the people who are making the calls. So, like, I think it's fair to blame him for a lot of the struggles this season, especially because they keep happening over and over again. It's not like a one-off here and a one-off there. It seems to be a systemic failure at Ferrari.
If we can joke about it on a consistent basis to where it becomes a trend, you don't want a joke becoming a fact of life. You don't. Like,
Right.
you don't want me to say, I don't have to tell jokes about Ferrari. But right now they're lighting money on fire. So yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to say that it's on Mattia. And I know that, like, they don't like to change things mid-season. I don't think it would change things mid-season. You're talking about these very big organizations that have a lot of things that have just been in motion for years and years and years. But stop making mistakes in the moment. These are not mistakes, like the things that we talk about that are wrong with Mercedes and that they've been fighting against. Those are systemic. They are technical issues that have to do with the design of the car and how they missed on this new design. With Ferrari, they got all that right. And then with the 5-second decisions, they keep botching those. Those are fixable, but they involve the weakest part of the machine in terms of making the decision to change how you make decisions, and that's people, right? Like, that's it. Like, the problem with Mercedes is largely mechanical. The problem with Ferrari is ears. Don't know if you can fix that if you're the one who has to make the decision about who to replace.
My general rule of thumb for like sports teams and personnel, don't become a meme. Once you've become a meme, you've lost the audience, you've lost the room, you've lost the team, you've lost the sport. It never works out once you've become a meme. And Ferrari has been a meme for most of the season, and Mattia Binotto is the face of that meme. Like, as a Notre Dame fan, as soon as the Brian Kelly purple face memes were hitting the Twitter webs, that's when it was over. OVER. Do not become a meme.
Yeah. I want to get to this question very briefly, which is my favorite question. Alonso and Ocon, WTH, question mark. Because if you saw Alonso and Ocon both getting passed by Daniel Ricciardo, who, good on Daniel Ricciardo.
Which was awesome,
the way Trump showing today. Well, it was a phenomenal move. Like, it was a guy getting past two people at Hungary. At Hungary, like, that's amazing. For me, this was the moment where you could see the people be like, oh, this is dysfunction. No, I mean, I think this is just two teammates who really couldn't get on the same page about who was supposed to cover what route. This is a lot like a back and a goalie after the ball goes in going, hey, man, where were you? This is back a safety being like, I thought you had him. No, I thought you had him, right? Like, that happens sometimes. I think that's what happened. Was it funny? Yes. Are we going to get these jokes off? Yes. Are the two possibly now enmeshed in a lifelong rivalry that ends badly with one of them leaving the team? Probably, because this is F1. I don't, like, it's largely out of their control whether they do that. And the idea of people being teammates in F1 is always sort of weird to me, because it's a lot like teammates in the sense of the Sith that it is in an actual team, right? There's one person who's sort of nominally the one, and then there's this person who's two but wants to be the one and might leave and or depose that person should they show weakness. It's always competition, and that always sort of makes the chummy aspect of it a little fraught. So, yeah, there's your long answer. What the hell? I don't know, man. Sometimes you screw up.
Yeah, and it seems like on the radio messages, Alonso does not want to, like, Alonso wants to be the number one guy, right? And so when Ocon has a little bit of speed or advantage to him, he's not cool just chilling and taking the second strategy. Like, he wants to beat his teammate. He wants to beat everyone. He's Fernando Alonso. And so he's not really cool with sticking around and just kind of playing the team thing. This is like maybe the second or third time this season that they've battled it out to the detriment of themselves, because they've gotten, like, in this instance, instead of playing along with one another, they both ended up getting in this entanglement, which then Daniel Ricciardo was able to take advantage of. And Daniel Ricciardo, with one of the nicest little radio messages of the season. It was so nice to hear how confident he felt after both of those overtaking Spencer. I was very happy to hear it.
Yeah, I think if you're a person who has hopped on the F1 train, one of the great quiet joys is discovering how much is going on in the middle of the pack, because it does sort of help you appreciate everything that's happening 1 through 20, because there's a lot of little stories. And once you sort of get over, okay, well, this person's probably P1 for the year. Once we decide, once we accept that Max Verstappen's probably going to smoke the rest of the schedule, which is kind of the question I want to get to next, but in regards to Lewis Hamilton. But before we get there, just appreciating the things like, yeah, Daniel had a great day today, had a phenomenal day for him, especially this year. When you look at what Mercedes has done and coming on the last couple of races and really getting more and more consistent and competitive, that's an organization that is putting in work. Yes, biggest bankroll in the universe backing them, but putting in work. And that to me is indicative of, like, where the sport can get really rich.
Well, you alluded to it already, but our last question before we wrap up today and take our summer break, Spencer, because there's a nice little break here, and then F1 comes back and college football season starts. So we're about to be very busy.
Hmm.
The
Yep.
question is, what's more likely, Max winning every race from now until the end of season, or Lewis winning at least one more time? What are your thoughts on this, Spencer?
I want Lewis one more time. I think that's because the idea of Max winning 9 in a row or however many races we have left, that seems improbable to me given everything that can go wrong in a race, right? Like if there's one thing that's really unusual, it's that we had very few retirements today. This is a sport where, inevitably someone's power plant blows up, someone spins into
Mm-hmm.
the wall. That's all stuff that happens to everybody pretty equally. Like it's pretty random sometimes who gets in and out of a race. Max isn't going to win all of them. Is Lewis going to win one more? I don't know. He's been getting stronger. I
Yeah.
know he's one of the best drivers in the world. He just hasn't had the car. The car is getting closer, and he appears to be more comfortable driving that car. And also, they're working really well together as teammates right now, right? Decently enough to good most races. So it'd be beautiful to see Lewis get another one. I want it. I've already gotten a couple of those ones. Like I got Carlos Sainz got one. I wanted Carlos to
Yeah.
get one. Carlos got one. I want George to get one because I am the number one supporter of the best lad. But
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see Lewis get another one because it's been a long climb up, and that emotional payoff it'd be something I haven't gotten with Lewis,
Yeah.
right? Because
Right.
I expect him to be so good, and now having him seen go through some adversity, I got to admit, I want that dopamine hit. I just want that little bit of dopamine hit associated with somebody who I think most people already think so highly of. I want that for him.
Yeah. It's been compared Lewis my fandom of Lewis has been compared to like if I were to just randomly start watching the NFL and become a Patriots fan. It's like you're just cheering for the guy who it's like the easiest to cheer for cuz he wins a lot. And I would counter that with
Yeah.
saying like Lewis Hamilton is 75 times cooler than the entire state of Massachusetts. So like I'm with you. It's like rare to have someone who wins so much be kind of the underdog right now. And it feels almost kind of like cheating to root for them to win something because they have already won so many races, so many championships. But with Lewis Hamilton, like it does feel like right now he's getting over some like major adversity, major hurdle with Abu Dhabi last year, and then the first half of the season having all these issues with the car and porpoising and etc. And
Yeah.
George finishing ahead of him in a lot of races. Like I'm sure that was kind of
Hmm.
a little bit of a hit to his ego as well. But I think today he proved he is still an amazing driver. He came from P7 to finish in second, but Max, of course, coming from 10th to finish in first was the winner of the race. But like you said, Max isn't going to win every single race. There's 9 races left. He had some
Yep.
big issues in qualifying this weekend. He's had actually a few issues qualifying throughout the first half of the season. This weekend it was as a power unit issue, I think. So
Hmm.
it's not inevitable. Winning every race would be very very hard, and I think I agree with you. Lewis is like right on the verge of it. They have all the speed going into the break. The car is performing better. He's driving really well. It seems like he's got his confidence back. So my money is on Lewis for that one. But my money's still on Max to win the drivers' championship. That seems a little bit more inevitable. But even if that's the case, Spencer, we're still going to have fun with the rest of the races we have left on the calendar, and we will see everyone else after the break. Do we have any final thoughts on the Hungarian Grand Prix?
Maybe just this looking forward. Okay, when we come back from break. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
now that we've got the Magyar Grand Prix all wrapped up and Budapest in the rear view, the first 4 coming back. Okay, 3 out of the 4 are legit bangers. Okay, first of all, first one back on the 28th is going to be Spa, which
Ah,
Spa is rainy, long, chaotic. It can be a real test of endurance and nerve.
as the
Um,
Brits say, spar.
Spar. Oh no, it's Spar. The Netherlands, we get the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, which is a
Mm,
really interesting track. And then uh, the 11th, we get Monza. All right.
mm.
So high speeds, and then Singapore. Don't worry about Singapore, but Monza. So the first of the first 4 races back, the first month, 3 out of those 4 can be pretty volatile. So
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to seeing what adjustments everyone makes. I'm looking forward to, most importantly, Instagram photos of F1 drivers on vacations I will never be
Oh,
able to
yes.
afford. Yes.
Always the highlight. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to you practicing more of your Italian for that race at Monza. I have a feeling you'll get to use some of it.
Yes, listen. We will make a comeback for the translation segment for this, and we will learn even more important Italian. Hopefully, you let me say things like this, Ferrari, which was Ferrari kicked ass. Ferrari made good decisions. Teach me how to say
Mm.
that in Italian. I would like to see that.
Well, we will see if that's the case. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you after the break.
All right. Ciao.
Ciao.